Today's episode of Heads and Tails is recorded with Jenny Anderson, who is one half of the author team behind the Disengaged Teen, alongside Rebecca Winthrop. They have had a monster year traveling the world talking about how to engage young people and get them to enjoy their learning. It's a fascinating conversation. Jenny's super eloquent, wonderfully experienced, some fantastic perspectives. Get ready to learn about Explorer Mode and how we support kids to really be their best selves. It's a great episode and I hope you enjoy. Welcome back to Heads and Tails. I'm Henry Faber. I'm one of the co-founders at Oppidan, and I'm so excited to post-summer be sitting down with Jenny Anderson, someone who I've been looking forward to speaking to for a long time, many months now. Hard to give a bio of Jenny in the short time that we've got, but I'm going to try. Jenny's work really couldn't be and need to fit for the times we're in, I think. The Disengaged Teen, her book, which came out in January of this year, early in 2025, it's been a key part of educational discourse since then, and I've heard it on many educators' lips across the world, really, in schools I've visited. Jenny has more than 25 years of award-winning experience in journalism, from an initial focus covering finance, steering towards the art of parenting, the future of schools, how to rewire childhood. She's taken part in big multi-year projects to examine neuroscience of early childhood, and then most recently with this book, The Disengaged Teen, trying to understand how kids can learn better, feel better, and live better. She knows education really in a global sense, and I can't think of a more respected figure with a wealth of perspective to share for the teachers and parents who listen to us on this podcast. So thank you, Jenny. And maybe you could start by giving us a little bit of a sense of the book for those who haven't read it.
Sure. That was very, very kind intro. Thank you very much. And just to clarify one thing, I co-authored the book with Rebecca Winthrop, who runs the Center for Universal Education at Brookings and is a massive global authority in education as well. So this was definitely not a solo project. The book, we kind of set out with a really simple question, which is why are so many kids struggling so much in school right now? Why are so many kids so unhappy with what they do in school? How bad is it? What can we do about it? And sort of tips and tools for parents. I think one of the things that was quite different about the book is it definitely applies to educators. It's had a lot of resonance to education, but we wrote it for parents because we feel like parents are often left out of the conversation about education. We have all this jargon and, sort of zone of proximal development and, school improvement plans and all this stuff that happens, and very little of it makes it to parents. By no fault of educators, because I think they've got a lot on their plates. I mean, there's so much to do in a school, and the school day is so jam-packed, and they're asked to do more every year. But parents do get left out, and so they don't really have as much of a language to develop. So what did we find out? We found out kind of three big things. One, kids are really, really disengaged with learning. So we found that they turn up in kind of four different modes of learning: passenger, achiever, resistor, explorer. Passenger, this is the majority of kids coasting along, doing the bare minimum. About more than 50% of kids show up this way. They are cognitively engaged with learning, but they are not they're behaviorally engaged with learning, but they're not cognitively or emotionally engaged in learning. And these kids are kind of showing up, but they're not really learning. So achiever mode, these are the kids trying to get gold stars in everything that they do. And sometimes this is great, but oftentimes it's at great personal harm to themselves. These kids are at the highest risk of mental health challenges, and they don't often take care of themselves. Then there's the resistors. Everyone knows these as the problem children. We argue they're children with problems. These are the kids who withdraw and act out. They make themselves quite known. And then explorer mode is really, we talk about this place where intrinsic drive meets curiosity, and kids become really unstoppable. And the big question of the book is, how do we as parents and we as educators try to get more kids into explorer mode more of the time? And, I think there's an assumption that maybe that's impossible to do in classrooms because of curriculum demands or designs or exam structures. That is just not the case. And parents do play a huge role here. And that was our kind of second big finding, which is parents have a tremendous role to play. Even in adolescence, when your kids act like they would rather eat nails than have a conversation with you, you are still exerting tremendous influence on how they think about themselves as a learner and kind of how they approach learning, like learning mindsets. So those were kind of the big questions we had in the book, and those were a few of the findings that we had.
What a place to start there. I want to dig more into the modes in a minute, but just to kind of give you an overarching perspective, or ask for your overarching perspective on it. Did something surprise you in writing the book? Like what's your reflection on that whole experience and process of researching and writing it?
I mean, super disheartening. I was genuinely shocked at how bad the disengagement crisis is. Like, I definitely knew it was bad. Um, I had seen the data, but I think when you spend 3 years in the data talking to kids themselves, we spent, we did a sort of quantitative research bit, which was surveying 68,000 kids and 2,000 parents. We talked to a lot of experts, school heads, school leaders, teachers, neuroscientists, educational psychologists, learning scientists. But we also took 100 teens and we followed them, some of them for 3 years. And we just talked to them intimately about their experience of learning. What is it like to go to chemistry? What does it feel like when you get a bad grade, when you get a good grade, when you get this kind of feedback? And it was just heartbreaking. I mean, a lot of kids really do not feel good in school a lot of the time. And that is weird because they spend a lot of time there. And so it feels to me that we should be thinking a lot more about the design of school and this question of how kids feel. And I don't mean that in a like, we need to entertain them and we need to be like singing and dancing and making everything easy for them. Like, not at all. Kids love to be stretched and do hard things, but they also like to do interesting things and meaningful things. And kids don't feel that. They feel anonymous. They feel that they're in a standardized system that doesn't see them or know them or care about them in any specific way. And this isn't this isn't teachers' fault, but this is how kids feel. So something is like horribly wrong. That was kind of, again, it wasn't surprising, but I was surprised at the extent of it. I was also surprised at how much influence parents had in adolescence. I distinctly remember thinking my parents had literally zero influence on me. Like by 16, I was like, they know nothing. Like they are the dumbest people on the planet. I am the smartest person on the planet. And anything they have to impart to me is completely out of date and worthless and useless. And so weirdly, I kind of carried that with me. And I thought there's no chance, the sort of that kind of adult has influence. And of course, when you think back now, I'm like, oh God, they had huge influence. I just didn't see it. You don't feel it in the moment. And so it was exciting to realize we do have influence, and it's, I'm hoping, useful to parents to say, hey, it doesn't always feel good because of the way they treat you a lot, and a lot of that's developmentally appropriate, but like it's still there, so persist, stay in it, stay with them, keep communicating those message, ignore the eye rolls, make sure they know the eye rolls really aren't okay, like there's all this stuff. So I think those two things, very surprised that we still actually do have as much influence as peers and teachers in the adolescent years. I kind of thought maybe the balance changed a lot. And this sort of kind of scope of the disengagement and just how profound it is. And I think, when we look at mental health stats, I think there's a big conversation about the role of technology, and it's an important one, and a lot of it is spot on, and I'm in there for that fight. I think we completely overlook how much exam pressure and school and the experience, this anonymity and this lack of sense of belonging and lack of sense of sort of stretch and challenge, how much that affects mental health as well. I think we absolutely miss that point too often.
Thank you. That was actually going to be my next question was around the influence of technology in this and how much blame you levy at that. Like, was it a composite mix of technology with all these other things, or did it surprise you to what extent you felt there were other factors at play beyond the kind of technological crisis we talk about a lot?
Yeah, it's a complicated question, but the sort of simple answer is kids have been disengaged from school way longer than technology has been in schools. So this is a bigger problem, which is I don't think we've designed learning spaces to be engaging for an adolescent brain. And that's really the focus of the book, is really the sort of period of adolescence, which is 10 to 25, which is a big span. But in the UK context, I'd say secondary school, in the US, middle and high school, that period is like a period of profound brain development. And what is happening sort of is this kind of search for meaning and heightened sensitivity to peers and kind of intense feelings and seeking novelty. Like all of these things are happening, and we sit them in a chair and like ratchet up the stakes and ratchet up the content without kind of making sense of the why for them. So, anyways, to your question about technology, I think technology exacerbates the problem, but the problem was there in the first place. Kids were disengaged from school because the design of school isn't very good to engage schools. Meanwhile, we then put like a weapon of mass attention destruction in their pockets. And of course, they're going to rely on it. Like Silicon Valley has designed these products to hijack their attention. Dopamine hits left, right, and center. So there is something there now that is profoundly hard to put down, entertaining, distracting, attention eating, basically. And so it is harder to do the hard work of learning. Learning is really hard, right? Paying attention is hard. Doing hard stuff like maths is hard. And so you have to build up those muscles and that capacity and the attention sort of smartphones have made it all worse. AI is a whole sort of separate question of technology and what that's doing and has done. But I think the question in the process of the research of the book was really sort of the smartphone debate. And so we're 100% in favor of getting them out of classrooms. Like, it is hard enough to teach a class without having to battle kids for their attention. I mean, just feels super commonsensical to me. All for sort of, making it harder for kids to get phones and log on. This is a lot about parental norms, but we ultimately come down on, at the end of the day, your teens are going to have to learn to manage their time with technology and develop agency over the technology. Like, and I would say this is very applicable for AI. You want to be able to use AI and not be used by AI. So that's going to require some playing with it and working with and experimenting with it and talking to adults about it, and having spaces to do that rather than kind of shoving in the dark saying don't use it and it's really not a tool. It's a cheating machine versus like an intelligent conversation about how we're going to use this and what kind of norms. So it's a big question that you asked, and it's not a simple answer, but we don't lay it all on the doorstep of technology, because I do think it's part of it's certainly a big problem, but I don't think in a way it's kind of the core problem that schools and parents actually face.
You've answered that very eloquently, thank you. And it is a can of worms, and we'll have to have a part two for it. But if I steer away from technology a little bit, I'm going to keep with the battleground theme.
Okay.
If the kind of key influences on these kids are their teachers and their parents, sometimes the schools that we're working in of all different shapes and sizes, different countries, different sectors, it feels like there's a little bit of a battleground sometimes
Mm,
between the parents and
yeah.
the teachers, a heightened aggression, for want of a better word, and or defensiveness on the other part, usually on the part of the teachers, and the expectation management. And a lot of heads have said to me, there's a different role sometimes that the parent is playing now, being more of an ally to their child rather than an enforcer. What have
Yeah.
you seen in all the work you've done, and your perspectives on that battleground? Is it getting worse?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to be annoyingly diplomatic here and just kind of give the two perspectives, which is I think parents are deeply anxious, kind of in the dark. I think they've lost the plot a little bit on phones, right? That one thing we always say to parents is like, you do pay the bill, right? Like, you bought the phone, you pay the bill, you do get to set the rules. And this is true of so many things, right? Like, these kids are living in our houses. I am not a dictator. I'm not into like authoritarian parenting, but just basic common sense is you can take your phone away from your kid at night. You can ask your kid to treat their teacher with respect. And by the way, you can model that by treating your teacher with respect. I think the problem is I think parents are super anxious, and as kids have gotten more and more disengaged in school, chronic absenteeism or school refusal, whatever you want to call it, is off the charts. Like, kids are refusing to go to school. Parents are absolutely panicking, and they look at teachers for solutions, and they're taking out a lot of that anxiety on them, which is totally unfair, but also interesting to think about it coming from a place of maybe fear and insecurity. Obviously, that's not how the behaviors always come out. I think the flip side is I think teachers told us, and all data bears this out, like, the thing they hate most about their jobs is often dealing with parents, which is not a great commentary on parents' behavior. Like, this is a joint endeavor. Like, these people are dedicating their lives to helping your kids. Like, step up and treat them with the same respect you would treat someone in your office who is a trained professional doing a really hard job. Like, people barely get bathroom breaks. Like, cut them some slack and try to get on the same page. So we definitely do have a lot of recommendations about how to approach conversations with teachers from the standpoint of a parent. Like, here's a way that's gonna, in the same way like you have a conversation with your teenager, that you wanna keep them open and not shut them down. Like, 90% of parents approach a conversation with a teenager in such a way that it shuts them down because they feel judged, because they feel criticized. I think there's probably a similar conversation here about how do you go in there saying, I'm really worried about my kid. These are the things I'm worried about. Can you help me? How do we get on the same page about this? I think it'd be really useful if in teacher training programs they spent some time on managing parents. I actually think that that would be a really, really, I mean, we know the research. When parents and teachers are rowing in the same direction, on the same page, sending the same messages home to kids, giving kids the same messages, learning outcomes are 10 times better. So we know that this works as a lever, but it requires work on both parts. And so we need to kind of do parent education, which is, hey, you cannot show up and yell at a teacher because your kid got, a 70 and you think they deserved an 80 or whatever. And, for teachers, like, here's some language to use with parents, and here's how you set boundaries with parents. Because if they're being assholes, they need to be, like, put in their place. Like, they don't deserve to be abused. So I kind of see all the perspectives, which is maybe annoying. Like, I should probably come down. But I do think, I mean, obviously, I think parents need to be respectful, absolutely, and understand the deep challenges of the teaching profession today. Like, I think there's a real lack of empathy for that. It was interesting when Adolescents, the TV show, came out, there was this big commentary as to, like, is this really what schools are like, or is this not what schools are like? Is this a terrible portrait of it? And it was like, whether you think it's the perfect portrait of a school today, like, guess what? Schools filled with teenagers are tricky places to be, right? And so let's have a little bit of empathy. Let's start from that position. So I don't know that that's a very satisfying answer for you, but I think it's honest.
It's both. It's both, and I think it kind of gives me another question to ask, which is advice for educators. You mentioned that the book is primarily geared towards parents. There's a lot in it still for teachers, as I've seen. What would you share with someone developing a career in education that might help them to see the wood from the trees or approach
Yeah.
this whole discussion differently?
So we've gotten as much, I think it's resonated as much in education as it has for parents. And I think the reason is it's helping teachers understand the sort of why behind some of the behaviors they see all the time, right? They are seeing these four modes of learning turn up all the time, right? They know when kids are not engaged. They can see when they are super engaged, right? They know when they're acting out, and they probably have those gold star children, and they love them because they're something they don't have to deal with, right? Like in the sort of chaos management of a day. But my guess is they also worry about the kids who are just doing it to get the marks and just doing it to get the gold stars. It obviously makes their life easier, but in terms of human development of those kids, is that really what we want to be doing? So I think it gives them language. I mean, the number one thing I would tell anyone going into education is, oh my God, do you make such a difference? Like the number of kids who said to us, and there's so many stories in the book, a teacher saved them. A teacher turned them on to something. A teacher got them excited about something. A teacher, you know, it's so cliche at this point, but it is so true. Teachers have a profound influence on kids. So, I mean, yay, you're going into education. It's not going to be easy. It's probably one of the hardest professions, but probably, in my mind, by far one of the most important ones. And, you know, when you do reach that kid, my guess is it makes a huge difference because we literally had examples in the book of teachers who saved kids' lives. And, on a more sort of normal kind of day-to-day basis, completely changed how they showed up in learning. A kid, we talk about, there's a young woman in the book called Stella, and she shows up in all of the modes. The modes are dynamic. They're not labels. We're not trying to pigeonhole kids. And we show Stella how literally by lunchtime she's gone into each of the modes. And she has this chemistry teacher who, when she would ask questions, would be like, why are you asking that question? I've explained that. And she's like, but I don't understand. He's like, what don't you understand? She's like, I don't know what I don't understand because I'm just confused. And he was so condemning of her and shaming of her. And she ended up having a panic attack in this class and had to be taken out. And, meanwhile, she goes to French and her teacher absolutely is invested in knowing who these kids are. She absolutely believes in these kids. She gives them this support they need. When they're confused, she helps them. And Stella said to us, like, I want to just give her everything I've got every day. And we're like, do you like French? She's like, I hate French, but I just want to give everything I've got to this teacher because she believes in me. So I'm going to believe in her. And it's like, wow, it's, maybe it's kind of that simple.
Does that just speak to the kind of cult of personality over curriculum in a helpful way? Is it like we should stop obsessing over assessments and curriculum design and actually just think about like how much we can invest in the people who are delivering classroom teaching, who are like managing groups of kids and playing that inspirational role? I don't know. What do you think?
If Tom Bennett is listening to this, I am not going to give him the satisfaction of saying that. Absolutely not. Should we give up on curriculum and standards and assessments? Because I mean, we need all of those things. I have very strong opinions about the kind of assessments we have in the UK in particular, but leaving that aside for a second, I think we spend a lot of time thinking about the what of what kids need to learn and not the engine by which they're going to do it, the core motivation to do it. So I think if we could help them believe that it is worth their while to invest their energy to learn the stuff. I mean, do I know the perfect curriculum? I do not. I'm not going to pretend to know that question, but do I believe deeply in knowledge? Absolutely. I think you're never going to have critical thinkers if you don't have a knowledge base with which to think critically from. But the question is, how are you going to get them to want to do the learning, right? Little kids just learn because you tell them to learn because they're really compliant, right? And teenagers are not. That is not what their brains are wired to do. They're wired to challenge. They're wired for novelty. They're wired for interrogation. They're not, and so we need to be figuring out how to get them to care. And relationships is a key part of that. So in this instance, in the story I just told you about Stella was willing to invest in French because she felt cared for. Now, that's not going to be every kid, right? Not every kid's going to have that same need, but another kid's going to need to know, is going to want to learn to, read a meal in French, and that's going to be their goal. And if the teacher supports them in that goal, that's the meaningful bit. But, there's a lot of variability here, but I think we really overlook the why. Like, why are you learning this? You're learning this because speaking another language is literally opening up parts of your brain. It is literally enhancing your capacity to operate in a world that has, X number of languages. Like, here's the why. It's not because you need to learn these 17 tenses of verbs for Friday because we have a test. Yes, and can I remind you why speaking another language is transformational as a human being, right? Like, we can combine those two things, and parents are saying that at home, right? When your kid comes home and is like, "This is so stupid, this is all irrelevant." Like, absolutely not. Like, if you think molecular biology is irrelevant, let me give you 100 reasons why it is not. Let's start with COVID. Let's start with disease. Let's start with your aunt's cancer. Let's start, like, literally, these things they do really matter, but we're just like, learn it because we said, learn it because it's on GCSEs, do it to get into university. And that's just not enough to get the fire going.
I think you were not credited, but I'd say the Google CEO the other day really spoke to Explorer mode and everything you found in a question he was asked about his advice for parenting in the age of AI. And he had two bits of advice. One was just remember that AI will support those who are already curious and will advance their ability to find knowledge and grow and improve, but it won't help the kid who's not motivated to use it properly.
Right.
And his second piece of advice was just as a parent, just do the things that you're designed to do as a parent more, play, create, question, challenge, like be there as the kind of engine to foster that experiential growth so that your child is in a position to take advantage of AI. Do you think some of the debate around AI and its positive or negative effects on how it might improve engagement, like I'd be interested in your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see the comments, so I don't wanna, sort of comment on that directly, but, I 100% think AI can be used in Explore mode. Like, I don't think the tool itself is bad. I think it's how it's used, and so if you're using it to deepen your interest in something, to learn more, to quiz yourself, to make your learning better. I think it's an incredibly powerful tool and it's exciting. And obviously, it's exciting for sort of the promise of personalization, which we've heard for 30, 40 years, and it hasn't totally materialized. And it's, potentially incredibly helpful for tutoring and coaching. I don't think any of that's going to displace the need for a teacher at all. And also, by the way, if it can help with sort of marking and lesson planning and all that stuff, oh my God, manna from heaven because we want to make teachers' jobs easier so they can invest more time in their relationships in the classroom. I do worry about cognitive offloading. I worry a lot about emotional manipulation. I worry about AI companions, like in a deep, profound way. I do not trust Silicon Valley to design products that will keep our kids safe. I think they design for engagement, which is max usage, which is not good for our kids. And we know that from social media. Like we've learned, we have a decade and a half to learn their playbook. So, like, beware, parents. If you think they're out to protect your kids, they're not, right? They are giving every student a back to school special on sort of the mega, study mode or guided learning or whatever. And these tools may be good and may not be good, but we need to understand how kids are using them and make sure that they understand that if it's doing it for them, they're not going to learn, right? And that's, to me, it's like, do you want to use AI or do you want to be used by AI? Like, it's really that simple. And so you've got to learn how to use it in that way. And that's going to require some interface with parents and obviously schools sort of having conversations about this. We can't sort of hope that we don't talk about it and it's not going to go away. And if we just leave it to them, it's kind of what happened with social media. Like we hope things are going to be okay or work themselves out or they're digital natives, so they'll figure it out. Like that's not at all what will happen. They will probably use it to offload what they can. Daniel Willingham famously said, like, our brains are not designed for thinking. Like, we don't like doing hard things. We look for ways to outsource it. We love GPS because it makes we don't have to read maps anymore. We love calculators because we don't have to do mental math anymore. Like, there's all sorts of tools we use, and we can argue these are all fine, but they clearly impair our ability to do that thing. I can't read a map anymore because I rely on Waze. Like, 100% of my mental maths are always a bit challenged, but, like, they've definitely gotten worse because I can just basically ask Siri. So it's like, what do we wanna do, right? What is our goal here? If our goal is improving kids' attention, which I hope that is a goal, then it's gonna require them practicing applying their attention and not having ChatGPT write something for them. So I do think it's like we're in really, really dicey territory. I think it's a tough time to be a parent because the stuff's coming at us like a freight train, and there's literally 0 people looking out for us, right? Schools, I think there's this, we need an AI policy, we need some AI training. Whether they're doing it or not is another story, but there is at least an acknowledgement that something should be done. Probably won't get done very well and not as efficiently and not as thoroughly as we'd like. Like, no one's there helping parents. It's just kind of like, good luck. So that worries me a lot.
I feel like this is a keynote address that should go on for hours, and we've already hit time, which is crazy. It's a conversation that should be heard in more schools, and you're a wonderful advocate for it from a fantastic perspective where you've kind of engaged with every key stakeholder within it and can empathize with all of them. So I really appreciate all the thoughts and comments you've had. I guess just to finish, what next for you now on a personal and professional note? Like, where does this book and everything you've learned from it take you on your kind of direction as a journalist and author?
Yeah. So I think one of the big questions I'm thinking a lot about is whether to create a platform for parents because I don't think there's a huge amount of trusted advice. I think there's some really good trusted people, and I rely on them all the time. And I think that's a useful model. Social media has built that very beautifully. You can go on Instagram and get little tidbits of advice. Um, I wonder if there's something slightly more profound, that could exist that would be just a really trusted, sort of, WebMD of sorts for parents where you could get stuff on extracurriculars, you could get stuff on struggles with math, you could get stuff on learning differences, you could get stuff really a kind of so I'm in many conversations about that, and the book itself has really, lent itself to a lot of very interesting projects about measuring student engagement, about trying to understand student engagement in classrooms, and talking to parents more widely. And I'm really enjoying that process because I do think, um, knowledge is awareness is a really useful first step. And I think if we can change how we talk to teens, it just changes a lot. It is, for parents, to the Google, whatever the Google guy said, uh, if there's something about let's just do what we were built to do. Um, One of those things is to stay connected to our teens, which can be hard because they can be real jerks, but, that is really the goal, and so the book has a whole set of toolkits as to how to do that, and I'm excited to keep getting that out into the world.
Amazing. Well, thank you for sharing it all with us. I know our paths will cross again and encourage any educators and parents out there to reach out to you because I know you're passionate about speaking about all of this. Thank you,
Yes,
Jenny.
thank you
A
so
wonderful
much.
episode and wish you and your kids a fantastic start to the school year.
Thank you, great to see you.